Hi, I'm Dr. Vanessa Weaver, your host of this special, The Upside of Aging, Confronting Ageism. And for those of you who don't know me, I spent my entire career really advocating for a level playing field for people in the workplace, whether they worked in the government, whether they worked in corporate America, in agencies, or just part of society. So this recent proliferation of what I consider just flagrant ageism comments and behaviors really disturbed me. And I tell you, I was really kind of waiting for this groundswell of reaction and comment to really say, you can't make that ageist comment, or you can't, show that kind of commercial. And I was wondering, why aren't people speaking up? And it became very clear to me that Vanessa needed to speak up. And so it's really out of that and in conversations with my community of friends and colleagues that this special was born, The Upside of Aging, Confronting Ageism. Well, I'm excited that we're going to kick off this conversation circle because we have some incredible guests who engage in their personal storytelling and really the lessons that they've learned. Well, we're going to kick things off with our first conversation circle. And I'm just excited to have these incredible guests here with us today to talk about how you're experiencing aging. And I'm calling you all the seasoned grown-ups, right? So we're borrowing the term grown-ups from AARP, and Kimberly blessed us with the season. So you are now seasoned grown-ups. So I really want to talk a little bit before we get into these mystery questions that you have. I want you to share with us, what was the first recollection you had when somebody treated you or considered you old? What was that like?
I was kind of late to the party to recognize that I'm aging and getting old, in quotations. It was just last week. I was coming back from Los Angeles after celebrating my son's 40th birthday. And I was coming down. There was a lot of construction in the airport. Came down like my second set of escalators, and I don't travel light. I had a huge carry-on and huge books with the New York Times and books and papers. And I come stumbling off the escalator and saying, "Where is gate?"
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, 48, And there is a woman down there with a wheelchair. And she looks at me. She said, "Would you like me to take you there?" That was my great revelation. Never in my life would I have thought I'd ever been offered to get a ride to the gate.
Well, did you take the ride? That's what I want to know.
Of course I did. I'm not crazy. Why not? It was fabulous. And that's what, brought the revelation. But then I said, embrace it, because it was the gate was about a mile away. And boy, was I happy.
Wow. Because Los Angeles is
it was a bittersweet experience.
That's right. So there are a lot of benefits
There are
too.
a lot of benefits.
Yeah, that wheelchair. Well, let me ask you, Nick.
A few years ago, I was walking into a store. Coming out of the store was a young man. You speak, you meet eyes, and you make eye contact. And he says to me, "What's up, Pops?" And I thought, my God, he's talking to me. That was actually the first time that anybody had ever referred to me as being old, that I considered it.
And how did that make you feel? What did you?
Old.
You felt old when he?
Yeah. Pops. Nobody's ever called me Pops. But
did you speak back to him?
Oh, absolutely.
And what did you call him?
What's up, blood?
What's up, blood?
If he's going to call, first of all, you have to understand we were in. I want to say he's the southeast or northeast. So he's going to call me Pops. I'm going to call him Blood.
And then what did he? When you called him Blood?
Now, by that time, we had already passed each other. Yeah, we were going. I was going in the store. He was coming out. So it was interesting. And when I got in the car, I thought about that all the way home. This young man actually called me Pops. Wow. And it registers.
It registers, it does. What about you, Kimberly?
So I've always been a Toys R Us kid. Okay, so I always have thought that I was just like this young, spring, fabulous young woman. And I consider myself to be that way till this day. But recently I was in one of my schools. I have a program, as you know, 5 Checkup, which is a mental wellness program for kids. And so these are like a new set of kids. So this boy comes up to me, goes, "Oh, you look like my grandma." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Oh, she must be fabulous." And he said, "She is fabulous." I said, Thank you, sweetie. And you know what? I actually use that as like a badge of honor. You know, I just was like, usually I say I'm your auntie, right? But when he said that, I was like, thank you. You know, because not a lot of people get that opportunity to grow up and to feel the love of kids and to be around them. So, you know, my thing is the more that I hang around the kids, the younger I feel, right? So that just happened like a couple of weeks ago.
But it's interesting because most people, I think, would have kind of been, if they said, hello, grandma, I think you kind of would have been taken aback a little bit.
I didn't say grandma.
Grandma.
I just said
I said grandma.
that's straight.
Grandma. GLAM. Okay. Start with Barbara. Let's see your question.
Okay. Okay.
And the Oscar is?
And yes. Describe your mindset about how you choose to live. How do you feel about this stage of your life? No boundaries, travel, new ventures, new beginnings. I have to say, the mindset about how I want to live and during this period is that I embrace it with a great big hug.
Kimberly's word, huh? Embrace.
Embrace.
Yeah.
It really is. And I look back at all the other decades, and when you're talking about 7 decades, that's a lot of decades. And I say, I think this is the happiest I've ever been and the most confident in myself that I've ever been. So I embrace that sense of empowerment, of feeling confident, feeling good about where I am in life, in work, professionally. I feel I've never been as creative. I still work 80 hours a week, and people say, oh, that's crazy. But I say, but I have a choice. I can choose. And I choose to do that because it's meaningful to me and it brings me my joy. And I think that when you realize where you are in a point of life, that you can do and choose your joy, that is a really special gift.
Do
to
and
celebrate.
choose your joy. I
choose
like
your
that.
joy and celebrate it.
And so Kimberly, you know, what's your mindset in terms of how you choose to live your life at this stage? Grandma.
You know, I wake up every day thanking God for giving me this day. And so I wake up thinking, you know what, I have a new day to do new stuff and to forget about what didn't go right the day before.
A new day.
You know, and so I really have started living in the present and being very mindful of that. Because sometimes, you know, our minds are like wandering and you're not paying attention to what's actually going on in that particular time. And I just think that sometimes we lose like the thoughts that we had and things that we wanted to do because we're so busy multitasking that I really have become more present. And that's really important to me because I have a lot of things going on. You know, I'm an entrepreneur. I've been taking care of my mom, you know, take care of my family. And I have like this amazing group of friends who, my community, right? They're my sisters and brothers from another mother. And we all connect on a level where it's full of love and joy and fun. I believe in fun. I believe in having fun.
What does fun look like? I mean,
Fun to me looks like I love to dance. I love to work out. I speak to people. That brings me joy. I love, you know, God's gift to me, you know, to provide my access to clean water for my kids. I love this new journey that I'm on with this mental wellness with my kids. And fun looks to me is going to my schools every day. I can be feeling some kind of way. And when I see those kids and they see me, that just brings me joy.
oh, that's great.
Yeah, it really does.
So you talked about community together. You talked about joy together. You talked about, you know, finding your purpose and doing it.
And she's a connector like me. And she was like, Kimberly, I have all these people I want you to meet. They're in their water, they're in mental wellness, they're doing this stuff. So, yeah.
Well, we're going to come.
If I can just add one thing, too, that's also what part of the joy, we don't sweat the small stuff anymore.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have learned how to take adversity or unexpected things that happen even on a daily basis and say, it's okay.
Okay.
We'll deal with it.
Yeah.
And especially with, you know, professional or working with groups of people or things like that. That's
So you don't
something
sweat
that
the
is-
small stuff.
No.
No, don't sweat the
I can
small
relate
stuff.
to that.
Yeah.
most of the time. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I do sweat the small stuff, but I'm trying to get better with that. Well, let me ask you, Nick, or Dr. Nick is your stage name.
And let me just say that not sweating the small stuff, I'm with you. That's all part of retirement. That's when you can just kick back and don't sweat the small stuff. But for me, I spent 38 years as an air traffic controller, working all around. Yeah.
That's a stressful job.
Yeah.
Going to do a job, wearing a headset, talking to people I can't see. I followed that up with a 25-year career in radio, wearing a headset, talking to people I can't see. Go figure.
So you're an introvert, or you're a closet introvert?
I'm an extrovert. I'm very outgoing, very outgoing. But it was fun. Now that I am retired from everything, I find my peace. I find my joy when the weather is right. I'm on the golf course. When the weather is not, like now it's too cold, you can find me peace and harmony sitting downstairs in the recliner with the headphones on, listening to some jazz.
Use those headphones again.
Don't tell. And I have a 20-year-old grandson who now lives with us. He is getting into vinyl, and I love it because I have a very extensive vinyl collection.
So you all are sharing that interest?
Yes.
Oh wow.
Yes. He is coming home. G-Pop, look what I found. He found an old Miles Davis album. I'm like, wait a minute, I don't even have that one. So it's fun. I'm finding my peace and my joy.
Well, I was just so excited to hear about the joy that you talked about. All three of you all used that term, and the communities that you develop, and the headsets that he's still connected to for 50-something years. But one of the aspects that we also wanted to talk about, with all the happiness that you had, how do you deal with ageism, or do you deal with it? So if you could share with us a not cool moment when somebody said something that was somewhat offensive, or did something, or you observed it with somebody else. I'd like to hear that perspective. Why don't we start with you, Nick?
My not cool moment was when and I knew this, I'm going back to my air traffic control career. As an air traffic controller, you have to retire by the age of 56. You cannot work airplanes beyond 50. Now, you can go back and sit behind a desk and be a manager. That's not me. I'm a hands-on kind of person. The not cool moment was, you're in your 30s and your 40s and you're having a ball. You're working the airplanes and it's challenging. Then all of a sudden you realize, I've got to retire in about a year. I'm going to be forced to retire coming up on 56. That to me, that was my not cool moment. I still, to this day, and I've been retired from air traffic for almost 25 years now. Still, when an airplane flies overhead, I find myself looking up at it. Wishful thinking that if I was there in the control tower, I'd be.
But what made that not cool? If you knew that you had to retire at 56?
Still, when it hits you.
But yeah, what made it not cool? Is it painful, or is it revelation that this is over? This is going to be over?
That's it. It's not painful. It's a revelation that the fun you had you won't have this fun again.
Thanks for sharing that. What about you, Barbara?
And I think the closest I have is when I might be meeting a group of new people and someone thinks they might be compliment me, and they say what's called like a left-handed compliment. Boy, I bet you were really something when you were younger.
That's a not cool moment.
Yeah, I bet you were really. And I said, well, maybe I was, but I'm really something now.
Right. And how did they respond?
I try to do it with humor. We talk about, well, I didn't mean that. I said, of course you didn't. But that type of comment where they think they're complimenting you because they know, we are of a certain age, but it really isn't. It pulls us up and makes us think and say, oh my gosh, am I that old that would be the response? And then I quickly dismiss it and put it away.
So you don't let it become, you don't harbor it, you don't sweat the small
I quickly put it away and say, That's okay. But yeah.
What's interesting about what you said, the technique of using humor,
Yeah.
to really respond to that,
Yes.
and that's a real skill to do that.
Yes.
You know, because a lot of times people shut down.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
You know, and they leave with hurt feelings and feel like they did not control that situation, and you're in
Right.
complete control of that.
No.
Thanks for that example. What about you, Kimberly? What's a not cool moment for you?
So, I don't even think about not cool moments because I feel like I have some beautiful people in my life and they feel like they have not cool moments and they want to express it and it just makes them feel so torn down, and so I always say, hey, listen, you got to just turn that around and do things that are not going to make you feel that way. Because when people say that kind of stuff to you, like you said, that I think it's a reflection on them, to be perfectly honest.
Right.
And so I haven't really experienced it because I'm always I'm like the ever ready bunny. But what I just tell my friends and my family, it's like, you have to really believe in yourself and your abilities and where you are. And if somebody, has kind of like a comment or something like that to you, I swear it just bounces off of me because that negative energy, I'm kind of like a force field, it just bounces right off of me because I feel young, I feel energetic, and I always want to be this way.
Okay. But the reality is that people that you care about, they come to you with those not cool moments.
They do.
That they can, and you tell them to.
No, I just say, you know what? Listen, you cannot let anybody steal your joy.
Okay.
And I really
say
feel,
joy word or something.
I do. I just say you cannot let anybody to steal your joy. And I just said sometimes, people have to have that self-awareness about, what they say to people. And I think that's another graceful thing, as growing older, because things that were said to me that kind of crushed me when I was younger, I would never say that to anybody because I knew how that felt.
Yeah.
Right? So I would never say anything. Every time I see you, I was like, girl, you are so fabulous. Every time I would never say anything about that would make you feel some kind of way.
Okay.
And then, to be perfectly honest, I look at these young girls and I don't think they have anything on us. Okay, I'm sorry. I really do. I just think that, with growing old gracefully and doing things to maintain your own mental health and your physical and your emotional, we don't have to deal with all that stuff. Things that happen like in our 20s and 30s and 40s, it's like you said, it's so different now because the way that I look at I've always looked at life in such a positive way and grown gracefully. So, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there's a group of people that I call the kind and the clueless. They think they're kind. They think they're being kind, but they're really clueless.
The kind and the clueless.
And I think it's up to us to help, make them aware of that in as nice a possible way, with humor or something, or engaging them and not letting it go. Because in terms of fighting ageism, I do think it's important for us to acknowledge it, and when it does appear, make people aware of it.
Well, I'm glad you said that because, my experience with a lot of seniors is that they kind of take that ageism and wear it on their shoulders. They just kind of absorb it and carry it. It's like it's their burden to carry. They don't want to make a big fuss. They don't feel like every moment is a teachable moment. So let me just take the insult or take that ageist comment and just sit with it and just move on. But I love you, both of your perspective of don't let it, be part of you and don't let, just bounce it back. Because we do have a responsibility, I think, to let people know when they've crossed the boundary.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, let me ask Nick.
Yes.
Nick, we talked a lot about the excitement of living, and I feel it in the conversation from the three of you. But we know that society often stereotypes I don't want to say the older person, but what's that term?
Seasoned.
The seasoned grown up.
Yeah.
And they often put them on the shelf, or when they retire, all of the experiences and skills they had go with them out the door. So let me ask you the question: What is society missing from putting seniors on the shelf?
Missing, the experience that a senior can provide. Uh, Seniors have walked the path that younger folks now must walk, but seniors know what troubles lie ahead for the most part.
Even with AI.
Even with AI, yes. They know what troubles lie ahead and they know how to avoid those pitfalls. Younger folks have to live that experience. The day they become a senior, then they too will be able to do that. But right now, that experience is missing.
What do you what is society missing? You know, the experience, the knowledge that seniors have. What else do you think society is missing by putting seniors on the shelf?
Well, I think it depends too on what society is, because I think our society
Yeah,
tends
US.
to do it more in the US than other countries where they revere the elder, or even within our country, Native Americans or things like that, where you are brought up with a reverence for the elders and their knowledge and their ability actually to tell you and share about the past. And what you lose in that are the storytellers of the past and history, so that we can learn from that. And that is a great loss. And I think that is one of the ways seniors can say, we can tell you what happened in this circumstance so that you don't have to repeat it. And I think you can be very clear and informed. Or like, in surgery, of course, when doctors or interns are operating and people make mistakes, they say, oh, we learn from that and we never make that mistake again.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing in each of our lives, in each of our careers. What the mistakes we have made, we embrace them and say, we've learned from it and we will share that with you so that you don't have to make the same mistake.
Okay. Kimberly, what's your perspective on that?
That's why I love working with kids, because I love being able to, pass my knowledge, and my experiences down to them, because the torch has now been passed to us, right? Because we got the torch was passed down, from our parents, or, our great grandparents, our grandparents. And for me, I just think that, like, really embracing our kids and talking to them and giving them, having these relationships with these young folks, I think really, has a lot to do with it. And a lot of times, parents, are working and they've got other kids and they may not have, the opportunity to really sit down and talk to their kids. So, I just think that it's important that we have more of these, like opportunities for, seasoned adults to be able to seasoned grown-ups, to be able to like have these relationships with younger people, because I think that that's really important, because there's an old saying, it's like, I wish I knew now what I knew then, right?
Yes.
Or do I have that backwards? But but that's one of those things, like, oh my gosh, if I would have known that in my 30s, I'd be at a lot different place than I am, like, as a seasoned grown-up. But yeah.
Now we'll hear from Iana Van Zant. She's a renowned motivational and spiritual leader, the host of at least 2 highly acclaimed TV shows. The favorite of mine was Iana Fix My Life. And Iana is the author of 5 New York Times bestsellers, and she's written 19 books. Iana's going to share her inspiring story on what happens when you have those unpredictable, what we call life happens events. And she's going to talk about how she handled those while still confronting ageism and still living on purpose with confidence and happiness. I'd like to welcome to our show my friend, the renowned Iana Van Zant.
Good. Hi. What does renown mean? What does that mean?
Are renowned. Sometimes, I feel so connected to you. I don't always really introduce you with all of the importance and presence that you have in this world and impact on our lives. So I just am I've used the term renowned to capture all of it.
Okay. Well, we don't have to. Let's just be here, girlfriends, and let people in on our
Yeah,
private
we're going
conversation.
to let these folks onto our friendship here. Well,
Yeah.
Liana, earlier we asked our guests, as a way of connecting with the audience, to share their first recollection when someone treated them or viewed them as old. Do you have a recollection? Do you have a first recollection of when that happened to you?
I think it was my kids when they said old lady. I
That
was
your
like,
kids called you old lady. Why were they calling you old lady?
old lady, because I was doing like, old lady, check your phone, you got a text. Because, I don't come from a generation where we text. You pick up the phone, you call somebody. So they would say, old lady, check your text, or old lady, where's your phone? And, I just took it as a kind of a joke, but I guess I really am an old lady compared to them, you know.
Will you share with our audience that you are a wonderful 72, just vibrant, not on any kind of meds? I don't know how many people I know that could say that. Um, but as you think about your life right now, and I know your second daughter died, what, not a year and a half ago now, right?
It'll be 2 years this year, 2 years this year,
Yes, in what, July or August. Uh,
July.
what's your life happen event since then? And
Ooh.
and what mindset has allowed for you to control its impact on your life?
Well, the life happens event is that she was raising her grandson,
Mhm.
her son's son. So when she made transition, he was transferred to me.
Mhm.
So at 69, I became the mother of a 5-year-old.
And Yana, every time you say it, I want to say, "Oh my," because it feels just like that. I mean, I know that you've been dealing with, been celebrating and raising him, but I tell you, it feels like a "oh my" moment, right?
Well, it was a oh my moment. It was a oh my moment. I mean, it was a whole lot of things, words I can't repeat here on PBS, but
Mhm.
but at the end of the day, after I got through the first second and the first moment and the first hour, and it was like, well, you know what? I'm gonna be here another 18 years because I got to get him out of college.
Mhm. That's gonna be God's gift to you.
That was my mindset, and what a privilege, what a privilege, what a blessing
What?
that God would entrust me
Mhm.
at 69 with a 5-year-old. So I've got to get him through college, high school, and get him through college. So
But
I'm gonna be at least another 18 years. Oh,
what
joy.
about getting them through grade school? How are you gonna deal with the football practices, the baseball, or the art class, or whatever it is he likes to do?
You have a village. I have
Mhm.
a village. And
Mhm.
in that village, there are young people, there are old people. And I have people, okay, I'm not going to the football field. What you doing Wednesday at 3:30?
Mhm.
And having raised 3 kids and 2 grandkids, I know how to plan. And I know how to get people to do stuff. There are people who do anything for my potato salad. I need to make you some potato salad. I need to fry you some chicken. What I need? Where are you Wednesday at 3:30? And how much you need for gas? So you lean. That's when you lean into your village. And
Mhm.
if you don't have a village close to you, then you go to your community. But you got to be clear about what this is. What is the blessing in it
Mhm.
first, not the difficulty. What's the blessing in this?
Why is that important? I mean, I don't know that I would think about what is. I mean, I wish I aspire to be like you in so many ways. So I don't know that I would be thinking, what is the blessing in having to raise a 6-year-old full time, not just weekend visits, but make a full, a lifetime commitment to that. So why is it important to think about the blessing in it?
Because if not, you'll be stuck in your human limitation.
Mhm. Stuck
You
in.
know, this child literally landed in my lap,
Mhm.
you know? And so it has to be divine. It has to be. It has to be divine. Like I said, I've raised my 3 children, two of my grandchildren, and now I've got my great grandson. That has to be a blessing. So the first thing I had to say was, okay, thank you for another 18 years, at least,
Mhm.
because I know the grace and the mercy of our Creator that you're not going to take this kid from his mother
Mhm.
and his grandmother and give him to me so that at some point in his growth and youth, I'm going to disappear too. That's not going to happen.
Mhm. Wow, you've given us some jewels today, Iana, as you always do, as you always do.
as a woman that raised 3 children in a very difficult time on public assistance and with a violent husband, I got skills and I got receipts. Okay.
And
So if I could do that with 3 kids at 30, I've got skills that I can use at 70 to deal with one
7.
7-year-old.
Well, Iana, our time is running out, but let me ask you one quick question. When you think about these life happen events to people who we call seasoned grown-ups, what's the major watch out? If there was one major watch out that you could leave with our audience, or that you will leave with our audience, what would that be?
Don't think it's wrong. Don't think it shouldn't happen. Don't think you don't deserve it. The first thing you ask is, okay, what skills, tools, gifts, talents, abilities do I have that I can use in this situation? But the minute you start, if you start off with this is horrible, this is bad, this is wrong, this shouldn't be happening. Why is this? You going down? You're going to circle the drain.
Right. Well, Iana, you are so persistent in this, in your mindset approach, because you first told us that when you were confronted with this situation, you said, "What's the gift in this?
What's the gift?
What's the gift?" And then you prayed, and I guess you did your spiritual hygiene.
Yes,
We're going to learn more about in your next book.
yes.
And I'm requesting that I do the first interview of that, please.
Okay.
So I just want to thank you for being a part of our Upside of Aging show, Confronting Ageism. And you've given a lot of advice and techniques for me to follow as well as our audience. So I want to thank you again, Iana.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you to everybody out there. I mean, we're here, so there's a purpose.
I'm Dr. Vanessa Weaver, your host of The Upside of Aging, Confronting Ageism. Welcome back to this segment. This is going to be our second conversation circle. And in this conversation circle, we're going to talk about what are some of those life transition points and how does that impact how you decide to celebrate this stage of your life as a seasoned grown-up. So why don't we start with Al, with your question.
Well, my question reads, when do you know it's time to leave? What if you don't have a choice? Well, first, let's start with the first part.
And let me clarify, leave a job, not leave your marriage or your relationship.
Well, if you leave your job, you're going to leave your marriage. No. When do you know it's time to leave your job?
Mm-hmm.
In the culture and the profession that I was in, you knew the ending date when you signed up. When you took an oath of enlistment, you knew that it was for 4 years. So in 4 years, you have to depart. But if you stick around like I did for 36 years, you know that retirement is evident. You're gonna retire. So
At what age?
Well, you go from 18 years of age until for me, it was 50 something years old. I was still as vibrant at 50 as I was at 18 in my mind. So it was very difficult to understand that it was time to leave. But the reason I knew I was leaving is because I had what I call a great GPA. And the GPA for me was goals, plans, and action. I had set goals for life after my departure. I had written down plans. A plan without on paper or recorded is not a plan at all. It's just a dream. So I had those plans, I had those goals, and then I had the most important part of all of it. I had what you call action. I took action, and that took courage.
Bob, let me switch to you because I understand that you retired twice.
The first time was a total failure, but yes, I retired twice.
Why do you say the first time was a total failure?
I had intended to retire permanently, but then a good friend of mine, who I worked with for many years, called me up, and he had just become the chief operating officer of his company, and he had inherited a big mess as far as projects that were going on. So he asked me if I would do him a favor and come out of retirement and help him sort out the mess, which I did.
Let's see your mystery question.
Talk about, for me, signs of aging.
Well, you see, I don't even take mine off. This is a permanent situation right here.
My question is, what next, number one? And then what's the plan, work, play, or hybrid? So again, going back, when I was 54, I found myself divorced with 3 young children under the age of 13. So I did the math and said, financially, there is no way I'm going to be able to retire when I'm 65 years old. So I basically said, for me, I've got to work longer than that. But I also said in 2010, when I was faced with another sign of aging, one society feels, recognizes as you aging, is I signed up for Social Security. That was kind of getting hit over the head with a board. But it again reminded me it's time to start planning for my retirement.
Okay.
So I started to think about what could I do? What did I want to do after I retired working professionally? And I had a couple of choices. One was I could continue doing what I was doing on a part-time basis, but I was really burning out at it, and I felt I wanted to do something different after I retired. And then I started to think, well, what kinds of things could I do? And I basically said, I've got to do some research and find activities that would feel rewarding and challenging for me after I retired. So I did that, and I came up with 2 causes that are very important to me. One is fighting Crohn's fighting Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. A family member of mine is afflicted with that. And the second one was gun violence prevention. And my daughter's best friend's boyfriend was murdered on Christmas Day in 2005 by someone toting a gun. So between those 2 things, I felt very strongly this is where I wanted to dedicate a lot of my retirement time to helping these causes. I was fortunate to have some friends who were involved in organizations that were doing these things. And through that, I was able to join the board of directors of the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence in 2014. Now, I knew I was still going to be working full-time beyond 2014, but I felt that this would be a good way to transition. I could work part-time for that organization while still working full-time professionally until I was ready to retire. And that's how it worked out.
I'm intrigued by your plan because you started planning on how you're going to live the next phase of your life before you retired the second time.
I felt
That's awesome.
my father didn't do that, and he was lost after he retired.
What do you say lost? What do you mean lost?
He didn't have, speaking to Al, he didn't have a plan. He didn't have an action item. He became more of a couch potato and just sat and watched TV too many hours a day.
Okay.
And it was depressing for me to see that, but it was also enlightening because it helped me understand what I didn't want to do when I got to be that age.
It's really important because, we talk about mindset, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. And what the data shows is that those individuals that have a mindset towards, actively engaging in their lives, they live longer, they're healthier, and they're happier. And the data is pretty conclusive around this, those folks who, decide to be, kind of couch potatoes and just kind of exist.
They wither away.
Yeah. They tend to go earlier. So Joy, let's see your question. Let's hear your question.
Life happens.
Life happens.
Life happens. I guess my biggest life happens moment was when I was 32, which enabled me to I think, take the rest of my life to plan. And that's when my husband died unexpectedly. And I had 3 small kids, the youngest 18 months. And you never expected, you don't plan for that. My plan was to have, walk down the street, as, elderly and with my husband's hand, holding his hand and that kind of thing. So it was really hard for those first couple of years to see seasoned couples walking in the street. Because it reminded me every day of what I did not have. But because of the kids, I had to rearrange all of my notions in terms of working, in terms of what I wanted for them and how I was going to, help shape their lives as a single parent. And, I learned a lot from them, and as we went along, and I think with the help of family and friends, we talk about sort of the network, the community that we build is so important because you can't do it alone.
Yeah, you can't do it.
And so things worked out fairly well.
So are you still working now?
I am still working my own business. And I think it was my father's passing, I think in '87, that sort of convinced me that I needed to rewire. And so the things that I was doing as in part of the foundation that I was working in terms of communications, I then sort of made into my own business.
Made it to your own business.
That's what I started to do.
And how old were you, if I can ask you, when you did that, when you started your business?
It was about 60.
60.
60,
So you're
yeah,
60
in there.
and you started a new business.
Yeah.
So that defies a lot of stereotypes, right? In terms of,
Yeah.
so let me ask you if I can. You can tell me if you can't answer the question, but I'd like to ask, was your son running for governor of Maryland? One of those life happens moments? Did you have to accommodate that, or is that just him over there and then you're over here?
Oh no, that's a family affair. No, he spoke to all of us. Obviously, his family, his wife and kids first, and because it does involve the whole family, and so involve what you can say, where you can go, what you can do, all those things, and so you sort of take that on. And the night that he was elected, it was one of those wow moments.
Yeah, it had to be.
Yeah, and it just shows, sort of if you work hard enough and if you believe and have faith strong enough, things
You can make it through. Well, thank you for that, Claire. Your question.
My question is family. It's my time or, family obligation. And it's like financial caretaker and grandkids. I just Chinese family, at age of 4, it's like take your parents and your siblings and, it's ingrained in my my mind. So, I have the first, Asian women at Mobil Oil, MNRs, and I have a great job. I can help, my parents and also my siblings. And my dad passed away at 60, so my mom was a spiritual support for her. So that's why, I have to do, just going and, and just, the job and, promotion.
For you, it's not family versus your own, time. I mean, this is your time to do what you want to do and go where you want to go, spend your money the way you want to spend. Right now, you're saying you're focused on your family.
My family.
You direct all of that. So do you ever feel any kind of frustration about that, or?
I would love to retire. But, I have, the balance. It's the Chinese, taking care of your family and me. It's a balance right now.
What would be a point of advice, Al, you would give anybody in our audience around this whole thing? Do I retire? And if I do, how? And how do I get my mind wrapped around that?
I think you wrap your mind around it very easily. You don't allow people to give a description of you without your qualifications to go with it. Don't describe me and forget my qualification. You tell them I'm 55 years old. I've been serving in the military for 36 years. I'm a black African American male. That's a description. You hadn't said anything about my qualifications. So if you tell them my qualifications, my livelihood could go on because they might put me on a contract and call me back to be that graybeard.
Okay. So, Les, I wanted to start off by obviously saying you're a renowned motivational a person and a businessman, a global businessman. But I know that you had a TV show. What was the name of that show?
It was called The Les Brown Show, highest rated, fastest canceled talk show in the history of television. We had high ratings, but I refused to compromise. And one of the things I encourage people to do, that you want to make walk away money, that if things don't look the way you want them to look and it doesn't resonate with who you are, that you want to have enough money that you can walk away. Most people, because they have not had a mindset and been trained to be entrepreneurs, they think in terms of a job, the journey of the broke. But when you are willing to take the initiative to create something that you are your own boss, that you can call your own shots, it didn't work for me. Somebody telling me what time to get up, how long my lunch break will be, what time I can get off. I got to ask for permission to go on vacation, and most of all, how much I'm worth. No, that didn't work for me. And so there when you think about the fact that over 300 million jobs going to be replaced by artificial intelligence, and there are people there who hate their job, but because they didn't take the initiative to create a transition plan, the initiative to say, I'm going to create something different rather than just stay here and complain and work just hard enough to keep them from firing me, and they pay me just enough to keep me from quitting. That's a contract for mediocrity.
That's so interesting because to the points that you're making, all of the data shows that over 60 or 70% of people are really not engaged in their jobs. They're doing jobs that, as you say, provide them an income that contribute, but they're not really excited about it. And what you're saying is that there's something much more exciting out here for each of us if we think about it and plan for it.
Yeah, life has no duplicate. And when you think about the fact that when you're young, life is slow, but when you get older, it picks up speed, especially after 35. Things happen to you, things happen to people you care about. And if you got bills, you say, didn't I just pay that last week? Let me tell you something. It goes real fast because the more you own, the more that owns you. So having a game plan of how you're going to make the rest of your life the best of your life, that comes by planning. That comes by you're looking at your life and asking yourself, what is it that gets me excited about getting up in the morning? What is it that I can do now that feeds my soul and spirit and be able to earn a living serving people with this skill, with this passion, with this hobby that I love?
Earlier, we asked our guests. So, it's all about this mindset. And so much of what we've already talked about is about the mindset and the discipline to really challenge oneself every day to get up and think about what excites you and what's the plan for that. But I wanted to ask you, we can just step back a minute and ask you, what was the first recollection for you when someone treated or viewed you as old?
Well, I was looking at getting another talk show when my show was canceled. And a person several years later took me around to talk to some potential producers. And they said he's good, he has charisma, he's a smart guy, but he's old. And I remember, I'll never forget, when I was in the car waiting for her to come and she said, they like you, but they said that you're old. So I just lost it. I said, well, let me look here. Let me go in there and show this little punk how old I am. I can do 140 push-ups nonstop. And I got out of the car. She said, you can't go in there and challenge a man to do some damn push-ups. They're gonna call the police on your crazy butt. Get back in the car.
But let's at the height of your success, you decided not so much to take a pause, but to incorporate a family member into your life and be the primary care person. And I asked Iana, did she feel any resentment for doing that? So I'm going to ask you, do you feel any resentment for having made that type of choice?
I get to do this and I enjoy it. I love my brother. And all of us have to ask ourselves at some point in time, Who am I? Where am I going? And who's going with me? And if you ever ask those questions in the wrong order, this is Dr. Howard Thurman, who's a mentor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., that you'll be in serious trouble. I'm a person who love to help. I'm a giver. I serve. I get to serve my brother. I've spoken to stadiums as big as 80,000 people, and people go online. Les Brown speaking in the Georgia Dome, spoken around the world. But now I get to give my brother hope. I get to say to Wesley, listen, your wife is gone, but you're still here. And you got a lot of life in you to live. And let's do this together. And so in life, there's a quote I love. In life, you will always be faced with a series of God ordained opportunities, brilliantly disguised as problems and challenges. I see this as an opportunity for me to share with my brother. We were in the womb together. I told him, I said, I came here looking out for you. You went out first. 5 minutes later, I heard a slap and you yell. And I said, hey, what's up? And they pulled me out. I came here looking out for you, and I will continue to do that until you take your last breath.
I'm just again saying thank you for the blessing, for you really being a part of our show on the Upside of Aging. I'm Dr. Vanessa Weaver, your host of the Upside of Aging, Confronting Ageism. And I'd like to say goodbye to you and goodbye, Les Brown, but for only a moment.
Thank you. Bye for now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Les. You were awesome. I've enjoyed being your host for the Upside of Aging, Confronting Ageism. I hope this show has given you a new perspective on aging and the opportunity to celebrate life and living. I'm encouraging our seasoned grown-ups to continue to make us proud by living life abundantly and on purpose. I'm Dr. Vanessa Weaver, and I wish each of you a Be Happy week. Bye-bye for now.